Hi, Nick Vince here. This week on the Chattering Hour, I'm joined by an actor who I've admired since I watched him play Kino in The Guns of the Magnificent Seven, Monte Markham. We talk about filming that, his work on Project X for William Castle, working with Debbie Reynolds in the musical Irene, The Golden Girls, and his recent horror independent film We Are Still Here, and others. Up next in this special extended edition of the Chattering Hour, Monte Markham. And we're back with my very special guest, Monte Markham. He started his TV career in 1966 with episodes of Mission Impossible, and had leads in series as Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, The New Perry Mason, and Baywatch. In the 1990s, he stepped back from acting to produce, direct, and narrate documentaries for the History and A&E channels. He recently returned to acting and is known for his top 10 independent horror film, We Are Still Here, and others such as Reborn. Such a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Monte, thank you so very much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Nick. My pleasure.
Cool. What I'd like to do is to take you right back, if I may, to the very beginning. So you were brought up in Manatee County, Florida. Is that right?
It's a small town on the West Coast. It doesn't exist anymore. It was taken over by Bradenton. But
Right.
Very bucolic. We literally had a cow, we had pigs, we had everything over there, and little farming. I was born there, but my mother and father were creating a life and a business in West Palm Beach, and they had opened a drive-in, and she'd gone over there to have myself. I was born second, and then she went back to, that was it. I think I was the only one born there. Oh, she went back to have the twins, Mike and Pat.
Right.
They were working, they were building a life in West Palm Beach, and that's really where I grew up. Very bucolic and very interesting.
Yeah, so what was your kind of average childhood like then? You say it's very bucolic. What was schooling and so on like?
Well, I know England is so full, and then I'm always astonished when I get into the countrysides, but when I say small town America, it was literally small town America, very small town. But West Palm Beach, it's hard to imagine. I was on Lilac Court between 16th and 17th Street.
Right.
And, I could turn right and walk west, due west out of my house, and I'd be in the Everglades. I could turn within 2 miles, and I could turn left. And if I could walk on water across Lake Worth, I would be in the Kennedy Mansion in Palm Beach.
Wow.
It was an extraordinary life growing up that way, but we had a very small house. I mean, we weren't poor. We just didn't have a hell of a lot. Right. But it was a four room and 5 people, and the business was around the corner. But my father had bought the 5 lots to the east of us. And I grew up with a grove of avocados. We grew all kinds of vegetables, and we were right on the edge of the what was the colored section, known then, Colored City. And we raised ducks, chickens, and rabbits. And every Saturday we would butcher, and chickens particularly, and dress them and sell them, right. And sell the vegetables. And this is while mother and father were running a business, and a very successful drive-in. So that's how we went through. So American graffiti, as I've often said, and it was that way.
Right. So
not so good to be black at that time, but that's what it was for us. Yeah.
Right. So when did the acting bug first bite? When did you first develop an interest in acting?
In my junior year, summer between my junior and senior year, I just we'd had a great time and a great life, and a bunch of gang running around and swimming and the beach, and it was a very good life and good education. But that summer, for no good reason, the gang decided that let's put Monty up for president of the senior class. And I was elected. And really changed a lot of the responsibility, etc. And we ended up producing a senior show. And I played a mystery man wandering around and had a great time. And it was a silly thing, as things are, more like whatever that goon show was. But that summer, you had a choice. You're going to be drafted. I knew I was in the draft, but junior college, and we couldn't afford university, and no way to go any further. So I know I was either going to go in the service. So I thought I'd take the classes and go into pre-law. And I walked on the campus, and the first day, and signed up for a very popular English literature class and a political science. And the teacher was a man named Watson Boone Duncan, seventh in the line of Methodist ministers, but he'd become a great teacher, great reputation. And I registered later on that afternoon. I was wandering around, very small campus, 240 students. It was in a firehouse in an old forgotten town in Lake Park, Florida. And he came up to me and said, "I'm doing a play. I'd like you to try out for it." Why? I don't know to this day. And it was called The Man, very heavy psychological thriller. And I ended up killing an actress. She was a year ahead of me at the school. And she later on wrote a book called Jay, The Sensuous Woman, which I think is very funny. Anyway, that was it. And Duncan became a great friend, mentor, surrogate father. Single-handedly, he got me into my first professional job that summer, right out of, I was 19, in Plymouth Theater in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and a 10-week season, played a lot of roles, the heiress, etc., the classic juvenile roles. Went back another year, we did 3 shows at the, it was all, it sounds very good, but I don't know what you would call it in England, but it was all done with tight pants and mirrors and a lot of cardboard, a lot of painting, and don't exit Upstage Center, you descend right into the parking lot, and that kind of thing. But it was great. And the following summer, he got me into, I accepted at Western Playhouse in Vermont, and that was a very heavyweight theater. Great time. And in the meantime, I thought, that's it. I'm going to stay in New York. And I got a call that he'd made a contact with a gentleman at the University of Georgia. And between them, they got me an out-of-state tuition waiver. They got me a job in the mess hall. And they got me a job sweeping out the dormitory. So I had a place to eat and sleep, and great help from friends, neighbors, and people in there. They came up with the money for me to make the tuitions, etc. And that was it. And then I had, 4 glorious years at the University of Georgia, 2 graduate. I went back. It was a great theater. It's one of those things where the football team just doesn't graduate. They keep coming back, and they keep winning the same champion. It was just, I cannot tell you, the plays I was able to do as a young man. And so then I did the Shakespeare festivals at San Diego and Oregon, but it all goes back to Duncan. And there was a wonderful man in Georgia named Leighton Ballou. This is a long answer, but it's my life in a nutshell. And had I not had that kind of basis, we could do anything. With Duncan, I swear, Nick, I felt like I was in 1890s. I would go to people's houses and I would recite poetry. I would go to the ladies' auxiliary meeting and do this and that. And I would do Edna St. Vincent's Millay, The Murder of Leda Shea, all on 600 years, and etc. God, Sam McGee. It was all this, anyway, it was just, and I kept thinking, I did a scene from a really wretched English drama with a gal, and we had terrible, called Dregs. And I'm acting my butt off, and we're on the couch and rolling around and doing stuff. And all these ladies are just, But this was Duncan's background of North Carolina and South Carolina. And so I would, and we sang, we had quartets, and we did things. And I appeared in a silly town and gown show as the prince in Sleeping Beauty, so I could get some costumes for them for Death Takes a Holiday that we were doing. It was just that kind of madness, and it worked. It worked. It stood me. I keep, what's the word? Channeling that every time I work.
Right. Because I think one of the things I know you for is your wonderful speaking voice. Is this just something that came naturally to you? Do people like me just say your beautiful speaking voice? Was this something you consciously developed, or just something you were born with, and this is the way you talk?
I talked incredibly fast, motor mouth, etc. And you're speaking too fast. I can't understand you. Until I met Duncan, and well, I became president of the class. I had to talk a lot, and I purposely began slowing down. But with Duncan, the plays we were doing and the articulation. But I think going back to all of the poetry and Shakespeare, and the classes at oral interpretation of dramatic literature classes you'd have to do, meaning it was a job, and I'd hated it. I was working in the mess hall and doing this and that. This was at Georgia, and I would run in and I had a class, I'd say, but you're supposed to memorize. Well, I had barely memorized, and you're reading the lines off your forehead, and that's the best you can do. Then you have to sit there and take all the criticism from the class of how wretched you were. And I guess I learned language, and I went to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and did Hotspur and a wonderful Horatio. I'm known for my Horatio. Years later, I did a Hamlet at University of California.
Wow.
I didn't pay much attention to it, Nick, until I was on, did a television show, a lot of television and things. And then I did my company doing secondhand perpetual motion films, doing all the documentaries. I did all the narrations for over 100 films, all of my films that we delivered to the network, A&E and History.
Sure.
And I would be standing in a line at the supermarket, and the clerk would ask me something, or someone I knew at the market, and I'd see the person in front of me turn around and look at me as if they knew me. Had no idea about any of the shows I'd done, or wasn't any television at all, but I know your voice and that kind of thing. And
right.
Finally, the president of the network said, "You're my favorite," but I said, "All of History Channel sounds like Monte Markham, so we're gonna have to ask you to have some other people come in and do this." So, but I think Nick, I swear to God, I think it's a gift. It can't. I can't hear it if it makes any sense. I can feel it in my throat.
Yeah.
I do a lot of voiceover commercial work and things like that, but I don't hear it the way you do, and I wish I did. It's wonderful. I listen to it, recordings. It just sounds like a guy.
Right.
Well, I was doing first really film. I'd done Second 100 Years after Power of the Gun, and I was doing a William Castle terrible piece called Project X, and it was a Chulo scenery kind of a role, and Christopher George and Charles Bluthorn was running Paramount, and the star was Gerda Baldwin, and nobody knew who she was. She couldn't act. And says, "Well, she's Bluthorn's latest squeeze." And I go, "Okay." But I went outside and asked somebody something. He said, "Yeah, somebody asked me what's going on and where are you?" And he said, "There's a guy in there tearing the scenery up with words." I had great speeches, and it was a wonderful time. Very schlocky, but it was a great time. Great time.
I was going to ask you about Project X because I watched it. I really enjoyed it, and I thought, I mean, okay, listen, it's of its time.
Oh yeah.
And it's made in the 1960s. Therefore, any costumes of the future, basically, they're all one pieces or mini skirts. Or I love the plastic helmets. The
Thank you. Great. It was a great cast, a terrific cast. Very well shot, very well done. We did the underwater sequences, and that was, I met Joe Barbera, Hanna-Barbera, and went over to the studios, worked with them through all of the animation, and became a great friend of Toth, the guy who designed the whole thing. It was a lot to it. I mean, we filmed it all at Disney Ranch, and most of it, and at Paramount. Wally Westmore did my makeup, and I can't think of the other name. It was always watching a Paramount film, and you'd say makeup by Wally, and the woman's name, and they were in there, and the distinction of being made up by all of the Westmore brothers at one time or another.
Because I mean, the theme of Project X is, it's like overpopulation, genetic engineering, biological warfare, East versus West. Was it controversial at the time, or is it just, it's a William Castle, it's a B movie, I'm getting paid?
No, I liked the script. I mean, I was loved it, and it was very very well taken care of on the set and big production. And I didn't feel silly. I mean, you do it. I mean, you always do something full bore. If I wouldn't have done it if I didn't feel like I could. Gregory, his name was Gregory. Yeah,
Right.
Christopher George, and it's hard to say. The only time it was kind of silly was with Gerda. I mean, she, you know, it's like the whole thing of I can act a little, you know, this kind of thing. It's a limousine would pick her, bring her to the set every day, and I kept thinking, who is this? The interesting side note, Nick, is that while we were doing it, there was suddenly a lot of attention on the set, suits coming in, and Rosemary's Baby had been published, and the entire Hollywood community was bidding on the book. It hadn't been published; it was in the galleys,
right?
And they're all talking to agents and things, and it finally comes back to Ira. I can't think of the writer, but it came back to his agent. He says, "Well, it's already been purchased by William Castle," and I can remember the shudder that went through the whole artistic community at Paramount. My God, Mr. Schlock owns the rights. So then they came down, and that's where Milham got his. All he did was have his credits, smoke a cigar, sit on the set, don't say a word, don't do anything. And he was very funny. He says, "Well, Monty, they want the thing." And so there we are. That's a great time. He loved it. He had a great time. I saw him often after that. But it was one of those flukes, you know, just a great time for a good guy. He was a good man.
Right. And a tremendous reputation. I mean, things, House on Haunted Hill, and you know, and The Tingler, and so on. As I say, you know, I refer to the B movie because that was his reputation. But Project X is a good film. I was really surprised, and as I say, it deals with all these big things. Incredible cast. The animation, so which you referred to, I just thought it's so clever.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. You know, great visually just to look at it, and so on.
It was wonderful. It's like a guy doing Yogi Bear, and yet his studio says finally, "Oh, we're going to do this," and it was Toth. He was making his living doing that. He was a very interesting man. I can't think of his name. I want to say Dave, but I'm not sure. But Toth, I'm sure, was his last name. And I was in his room with him, watching him design, and it was very exciting. It was a great time for me all the time in film. I spent all kinds of time behind the camera, in front of the camera, and everywhere I could, scoring sessions. Little known, my first makeup for Mission Impossible, that was the first television I did.
Yeah.
Our makeup man was Johnny Chambers, who designed the Planet of the Apes, did all of the magnificent work. And his partner on the set was Danny Strepek. And Danny Strepek turned the guy into a snake. These were two geniuses of early, they were the East Western guys. Right. In the East, you had Smith and the others. But John was a great friend, became a great friend the whole time, and Danny. But we were doing Planet of the Apes, and then my son ended up with one of the pullovers that you could put on the heads for all the vast crowds of planets. But John went on to he disappeared, and found out much later that the CIA hired him, and he created many, many things for a car rounds a corner with a man sitting in the seat, and the guy rounds the corner is being followed. They fall out, and you jump in, and there's another guy can do the same thing on his head, or there's a quick blow up, or there's a quick anything. But he invented all kinds of things. I worked with the CIA later on some documentary filming and for Air America and CAT, and met some people then. But it's like, we can't really tell you. You know, if I told you, I have to kill you, that kind of thing. But John was great. He just disappeared, and then he came back and died shortly after.
Wow. So yeah, you mentioned Mission Impossible, but also working on films, and I mean the next big film I wanted to talk about was The Guns of the Magnificent Seven. Was this just a casting, and you turned up?
How long do you have?
Go on. I'll edit other pieces out.
I had done Hour of the Gun was the first film I did, and that was with the Mirish Corporation, and a great casting director had done that, and I met Sean Sturgis, and I show up in Torreon, Mexico, and so we're there. But you signed with Mirish, and there was a 3-picture deal that they optioned you right away. On the set it was Johnny Voight's first film, and mine, and Sam Melville, Frank Converse. These are all guys whose fingerprints would be on the same scripts, and we were all under contract with Mirish. You had to sign an option to do a feature those days, and the film came up. I did the second 100 years. I went back to audition for that, and then got the role. I never thought I'd get it, and we did. So then I got Project X while I was waiting on that, and then I was cast to do Guns of the Mag 7. Paul Winkos, producer and director, I met him. But Walter Mirish and the Mirish guy, they were all terrific people, and I think it was one of the most. It's just, all things considered, probably the greatest 3 months of my life. I just. The only thing wrong with it, my family couldn't be there. My daughter was nearly 6, and my son had just been born in '68. February, I was doing a Ray Bradbury play, and then this comes up. He was only about 4 months old, 5 months, and my wife couldn't travel with him. So she came over for a 10, 12-day period, which was marvelous. You had time on, time off, but the cast and it just, everything worked well, and it was a damn good script. George Kennedy was the sweetest man. He had got an Oscar for Cool Hand Luke, and what's his name? Yul Brynner did not want to do another one after Disaster, the first remake.
Yeah, sequel, yeah.
He said, no, I don't do this no more. It's garbage. And so somebody looks around and said, let's put George Kennedy. And George was delighted. He says, I never get to play a leading man. Here I am. And it was great. What can I say? It was 3 months. We stayed in Madrid. The shoot was a wagon wheel. In other words, Madrid was the hub. So we always came home to Madrid every night. But you'd go out 50 kilometers here for the fortress. They built this in the fortress. So they go over here for something else, or over here for another scene. And but it was all on the Extremadura there, right around Madrid. It's a very rough area, but Madrid is one of the great, great cities. It was, I can't think of their patron saint right now, but it was the big festival, and Cordobés had completely revitalized the dying sport of bullfighting. So the great, great bullfights were going on with Cordobés, Ordóñez, Paco Camino. These were the ascension of, this is the new guy. And the two guys would be standing on the sidelines at the Barrera watching it, and Cordobés are doing all this stuff, and they kind of look at each other and said, the kid's great for the sport. And that was that kind of thing. And Joe Don Baker bought a cape, a Matador's cape, and he wore it. And he was dating a girl that was one of the was a stunt girl, but wasn't working the film. But she wore a miniskirt, and Joe would walk down the middle of Madrid, and this is 1968. And the Spanish would look at him, and he'd have his cape on. And what the hell are you looking at? And then he'd look at her with her miniskirt, and what the hell? She got her right. And Joe was just funny as hell. Very, very combative. Bernie Casey, his first film, and sweetheart of a man. Rennie Santoni, comedian, playing. Would be eating lunch on the set and doing something. And Bernie would say to, how do you say, I'd like another one, pork chop in Spanish. Rennie looked over at him and said, El puerco de chop. Bernie damn near ate him. Not very funny, mate. And we did it. But it was just great. We had time off. The big thing was we showed up and we had a week there, and Vince Finley was the producer. And he allowed us a week to acclimate to the time change. And then we went out to watch the Spanish stuntmen work out and show us what they could do. It was like one guy would a lasso, 4 horses, stop them. And another guy would run up a pole and cut the wires and then run down the pole. I mean, run down the pole. It was just amazing. The only story I could say that's extremely funny or good, we thought was funny. Frank Silvera, it was one of his last films. Frank was a great man. We had a big long shot as an opening scene where we're on the hill. It's one of these, we did some bum, bum, ba bum, bum, ba bum. We're coming over. We're going to do the 7. We got the 7. Here's the 7 doing this. There's the 7 coming. These are connecting tissue. And it was a morning shot about 6 a.m. and they wanted a dawn against the sky and they would introduce Bernstein's music. And so we had, Bernie had a big gray horse. He was a big man and a big horse. So we're on the hillside there and we take off and George goes over and I go over the hill and wet grass and all of that. And we feel ourselves, we can hear the music. And then you hear this, damn, what do you stop? Hold it, hold it, yeah. And we kind of all stopped and looked around. Bernie's horse had just sat down on its butt and was sliding down the hill. So we all gather around and said, what's going on? So, well, I don't know what's wrong with this horse. Let's do it again. We did another shot. Bum, bum, bum. Going to think of the horse, boom, sits on its butt and just slides again. And finally we come up in a very sheepish wrangler, the Spanish wrangler, says, oh, senor, the horse has been. Well, the horse had an open wound on a saddle sore. Well, he didn't have a donut, it'd be like a bagel. And you put the bagel over the donut, then you put the saddle blanket on and there. But they had used it for somebody else. So we had to change saddles and pull it back. And then it worked, but it was just funny as hell. And they've got some stills of him, Bernie's feet out like that, and he's looking sides and you couldn't believe it. It was a great shoot. I can't, thank you for bringing it up. I thought we were going to talk just horror.
No.
No.
Oh,
no,
you wait, we're going to get to Irene at some point.
Oh. You're looking at one of the most fortunate actors in the world. Nick, there's nothing I haven't done. If anything, Duncan gave me that. You do everything, and everything that's offered, in a sense, if you can find a reason to do it, if it's good enough for this reason or not to do it. But I've done everything from, like, say, Mag 7 to Captain Kangaroo singing Put on a Happy Face. It was like, what else could I do? I've toured. Great people.
Right.
And working with, Ray Bradbury and Norman Corwin. I mean, when I was at Screen Gems doing Second 100 Years, I'm on the Columbia lot. And this is before Columbia merged and moved. And the television shows were on, Larry Hagman and Bewitched and all of these. And but also you'd walk out and coming down the street would be these incredible showgirls they're shooting Barbra Streisand, Hello Dolly.
Oh, right.
Next door to me is a soundstage and they're shooting Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Spencer Tracy. The makeup man got me to the electrician and I got in when I wasn't filming. I went up into the grid, the balcony for the electricians. And I could watch, and I watched filming Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. And the Columbia was like that. There were all kinds of things from movies going on. And I'm doing television, and the monkeys were there, and the monkeys were breaking down and raising hell on the thing, and it was that kind of craziness. But welcome to the '60s.
Because you mentioned television. One of the things you also did was the $6 Million Man,
Yes.
playing the $7 Million Man.
The stories are true, all true. That's the good thing about them. It was. I'll think of his name in a minute. He wrote Cyborg, the 6 million. He wrote it. He became a great friend, a pilot. He's a madman in Florida. My brother, Jess, who had been in Air America and a pilot, had known him. And we went down to Gainesville and met him and flew in his plane, a Ford Trimotor, and with the swastikas on the side. But he was a demon writer, wrote voluminous kind of mad adventure books. But he wrote $6 Million Man. And he went to the studio and said, Monte Markham has to play this role. He said, he is the $6 Million Man. And what's his name? Had who is the six? I can't think of his name right now, but they wanted him, meaning the studio did. He had a strong television name. And
Lee Majors?
Yeah, Lee Majors.
Yeah.
I'd known Lee. I met him many times, but he was doing it. So it was on and on. Well, Harv Bennett was producing. And next thing I do, I got a script to do the 7 Million Man. Harv was cursed at Universal because they did a movie of it, a television movie, $6 Million Man. And Universal said, and NBC, I guess NBC said, can you make this a series? We need it right away. And Harv is a genius and a writer and ready to do it. And he put it on like, I want to say something insane, like he started a television series in 8 weeks. Well, Universal was filled with many producers. Roy Huggins. It was a machine turning out 14 hours of series a week. Harv did it in 8 weeks, and I'll keep delivering the scripts and the shows, and it'll work. And they did. And all of them cursed him and said, well, now you've shown them that we can do it if you have to do it. But he sent me the script. I thought it was great. And there was rumors, and it was true, that it was a big success that first year. And his agent was going for the moon on money. And Harv said, I had the line in the show, you think they made just one? I was there, I was cast and I was doing it. And they made the contract finally, and Lee stayed on. And but I had a great time. The toughest part of it was, as you know, it's all slow motion. Well, Nick, they can see all of your mistakes, all of your, I don't know. So you have to concentrate on that. You don't want your tongue sticking out. And Lee by then said, I don't like doing it. He didn't do a lot of that. He really hated it. And Vince Diedrich was an older guy, stuntman. And if you see when we jump off the telephone pole in that opening sequence when he goes to have his first battle, Vince jumps and he hits the ground, and you see the ankles kind of go. And Vince kind of busted both his ankles at that time, just running, but he kept running. And I jumped like a hero, and I didn't bust mine. And I ran in. But these are all stuntmen I knew. And I had worked with them, and they just gave me a hard time. But all those, you had to do them. And there was a guy that I lifted over my head. He weighed about 140 pounds. He was Paul Newman's not double, but he would do the stunts. And Everett Creech was in the truck, and then somebody else had it. But I had to pick that guy up, and they'd find some way to wiggle me and drop it and do it. I did it about 6 times, to throwing through the lead fence. And I never felt as bad in my life at the end of that day. And it was great fun. But I look at it now, and it was, I don't mind it. That was a what more can we do to Markham? Yeah.
So
But it was good people.
Yeah. So how many episodes did you do?
Just the 2. It was the $7 Million Man, and then a year later they called me in. I did the Bionic Criminal, and I became the Bionic Criminal. I don't know if they turned me down, and they toned me down to a normal man, even though I had 4 appliances. And psychologically, I just couldn't make it. And thank you, Lee. It was tough.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about guest starring. Comes a point, no matter what you're doing, there's the hero of the show or the regular of the show or the star of the show. There comes a point where you have to remove your cojones and give them to them, and they'll put them all together for you and give them back to you, and your life will go on, and you've been saved, and it's worth it. The medical shows were the worst about that. That's just a sidebar for guest starring in television.
Right. Yes. Always something to bear in mind.
Oh, yes.
But I mentioned earlier on Irene, your Broadway debut, opposite Debbie Reynolds.
Yes. So John Gielgud directing. That was we started with, what's not to like? I said I'd really like to do a musical, and I'd like to go on. I'd like to do a Broadway show. And word was out at William Morris, and with my manager and them. And then I was working, and then I got 2 scripts. One was A Little Night Music, and the other was Irene. And I read them both in a night, looked at them. It was the lieutenant in A Little Night Music, and he was a grandiose character, but it's the character that can really be stripped down to nothing and just do a good song or 2. And then I looked at Irene, and Marshall was there from beginning to end, and I said, "Oh, this looks good." And I hear it's Billy DeWolf and Patsy Kelly are cast, and can't think who else at that point. Peter Gennaro's doing the choreography, and Sir John Gielgud, and Harry Rigby and Mad Harry with Nono Nanette and Al Selden, who had done Man of La Mancha, and then Jerry, I can't think of his name, who created Builder. He built the building, his family, Linscoff, very nice. So Follies opened and came out to LA, and I met with the musical director, who was an old friend from the San Francisco Actors Workshop, Paul Giuliani. His name is, you'll see it all the way through now. That's another side story, but I talked to Paul about doing it, and he said, well, it's there, we'll do it. And we talked, and he said, it's good. And I met with the writer, and wonderful man. And then I flew to Vegas at 3 a.m. I met Debbie after a show at 3 a.m. And it was a piano player, and kind of the lounge, and darkened, and she came in, okay. And I went up and I sang Try to Remember from whatever that show is, The Fantastics. Mm-hmm. Just, okay, he's a singer, okay. And that was it. And then I did a tap dance on a board, not a tap dance, I worked on a board with Al Lantieri, who had worked with Peter Gennaro and did Some Like It Hot, and they were chorus boys together. And Al got on the phone, and Peter talked to him. Peter had a kind lisp like this, and he was talking to him, and I could hear it on the phone. He says, all right, having to do this and this. And so Al says, try this step and try that, and make a lot of noise. I said, okay. And Peter says, well, what do you think? And Al says, yeah, I think so. And Peter said, okay, he can learn. Okay. And that was it. So that was it. That was me and Irene. And it was that way when we showed up. Rehearsals, and it was a big deal. Hell hath no whore like a $7 million advance, $1 million advance for a movie, for a play, theater. And everybody was very up on it, very high. But it was kind of Debbie's first stage, legitimate stage. And she was very nervous and wanted everybody surrounding her. So we had her, Carmen Alvarez and Jeannie Sell, playing the two buddies. Long story short, we got to New York. We opening a preview in Toronto. They crammed the sets onto the Royal Alex, and it was taped. Opening night, America. Johnny Carson's announcer was Ed McMahon, and it was shooting Irene, and do it as what's happening. And there's an opening number that just keeps developing. It was brilliant. Wally Harper kept doing the music, and Peter. And Peter's assistant was Bob Fosse's ex-wife. I can't think of it. She was wonderful. It was great. All of the material, all the people. And the chorus, Debbie starts dancing, and the two friends, and they all keep doing it, and it's a trio, and they're all over the place. And then the chorus joins her, and it's a big, first act number. Well, Debbie sees it, and she looks like a gnome between two giants. And then the next day it started with there being, as you know, choreographed upstage, and it was kind of a trek then of Debbie feeling more confident and pulling people and things to make it more. She was really more comfortable as Debbie Reynolds, not as Irene. And she was comfortable supporting herself. And we're in an elevator in Philadelphia and out of town. And she weighed about 100 pounds, maybe soaking wet, maybe 99, but she worked hard every day. Right. And we're in the elevator doing rewrites, and it's going up. And I looked at her and I said, you really need to do this. And she said, when's the last time you bought any Carl shoes? Well, it was Harry Carl she'd married, and he just gambled away 99% of her money. And she needed the job, took it, got well paid. And it was, Carrie Fisher was 14. She was in the chorus, and she was terrific. She was lovely. The boy was in the hotel room, and she eventually cleared people out. And so when we got to Philadelphia, she didn't want John. Next item, so John is fired. And John, I don't know what your audience is, but we had lunch or dinner in Philadelphia after I got the word. And you see, oh, fuck him. They still have to pay my residuals. They still have to pay my royalty. Fuck him, Monty. He was wonderful. It was like just a terrific man, very elegant. But like even I've heard the English say, yes, he's a lovely man, but just can't direct. Don't let John, please don't try that. Yes, all right. I've heard all kinds of John stories, but we just had a grand time. I love John, and he was John very good to me. Now we were a good time. But they brought in Gower Champion, and Gower came in, and I met him, and they canceled the preview opening in the Minskoff. And we took 4 weeks cold at the National Theater in Washington, D.C. And we rehearsed at the Eisenhower Center. I met Gower, and Gower had seen the show, and Gower came backstage to see me in Philadelphia. And he said, I don't know what I'm doing here. I said, I swear. I said, the show is terrific. And Peter's choreography, all of the work. And okay, so then we get to Washington, and we go to the first rehearsal, and he comes over to me and he said, she wants you out of the Irene number. Well, the Irene number was one of the biggest numbers you've ever seen. Donald Marshall, when he comes in the real play, he kisses her. She slaps him, and he gets on the floor. Then he leaves. Well, in the thing, she slaps me, and we talk and do something. Oh, no, that was at the end of the scene. She starts playing the piano. And then I come over, and we start a soft shoe. We do a soft shoe kind of off beats. It was off tempo, and she loved it, and we loved it. And then we kept going and going, and then the pit suddenly picks up, and they're doing Hungarian rap, and we signal. They had hot plates on the stage, and we moved 4-player pianos into position. And then I lifted her up onto the piano, and she threw her a broom, and she twirled a broom and walked back and forth along them and dancing, and we're singing, and I'm playing with all 4 pianos running back and forth. And at the end, she does a big twirl and leaps off the piano, and I catch her and spin around. Great number. The audience loved it, had a great time. I looked at Gower, and I said, damn. I said, well, look, if she wants me out of it, I said, get me out of there pretty quick, then. I don't want to hang around the stage. And that same night, I gave my notice to the producers, and I said, I really don't want to stay then. I'll stay with you and until opening, and maybe in June, I want to take my kids and go back to California. And they agreed. And but she also wanted to kill the Great Lover Tango. And Gower said, if you kill that number, I'm not doing the show. So it stayed in, and I still had the Great Lover Tango and a great time. I understood everything that was going on and why. You wonder how things could change your life. I mean, had everything gone exactly the same way, I would have stayed in New York, I'm sure, and gone right into something else and just stayed on. But it was a good time. It was just, I mean, I was never so impressed. I can remember the first day of rehearsal in the Broadway theater, and it was likely, you can imagine the same thing in England, but the windows were all along the floor and the wall, and there were seats and chairs, and the book people, you would work in one studio and do all of the book work. Meanwhile, the choreographer and the chorus are all working it out, and your substitute is working the steps with, and then you come in, and then they fit you into that. And they were fitting me into the Irene number, not Irene. We were doing the Irene number, and all sang out. And I remember looking over it. All the chorus boys were sitting along the benches watching us, and I kept thinking, if it means anything to you, they called me the Butch Canary, and it was a lot of gay young men and a lot of non-gay young men and a lot of wonderful married couples, singer dancers. There were singer chorus, there was dancer chorus, there were singer dancer chorus, but very hot, and they were all sweating in that, but it was just elegant looking at them. I thought I was seeing a wonderful painting of them silhouetted against the thing. I have great memories of all of that. The theaters were just fabulous, and it'd be great because I'd never worked in New York on the Broadway stage, and did some off stuff, and it was just, it couldn't have been more perfect. And it would have been perfect had I stayed and been able to stay, which I would have, hands down.
Yes,
that's my story.
Right. And it seems an awful shame, but as you say, what happened? One of the things that happened next was the Golden Girls. with Betty White and the rest of the gang.
I when you say there's nothing I haven't done, I have wonderful iconic moments, and I think back more now because I've had to do a lot of writing and a lot of work on all of my papers. All of my work has been. The University of Georgia has the Peabody Archive and the Peabody Awards, and they have the great library archive, giant, beautiful facility. Had wanted my papers and my stuff, and so it's between perpetual motion films with the document and then all of that. So I've been having to boxing them up and deliver, and but you got to identify everything. And anyway, going to Golden Girls, Paul Younger Witt was the associate producer on Second 100 Years, and we'd worked, and finally he directed the Christmas show, and then we went our separate ways. And next thing I know, he's doing something with Thomas, and he's married to what's her name, and they're doing this wonderful show. And I had met and known, oh God, who's the 100-year-old lady, almost 100?
Oh, Estelle Geddes.
No, I mean, give me the cast. Her name is gone now. She's about to turn 100.
Oh, right.
Welcome to the club, man. Welcome to the club.
Yeah. Betty White.
Betty White, yes. I knew from the Screen Gems lot, and I knew her many, many times, actors and others for Animals, and we've been together, and we never worked together. So I get a script from Paul and said, we'd like you to do this. And it was Clayton, and script was just wonderful and funny. And I hit the set, and the set is everything you could imagine. It's exactly as you imagine. You saw it on the shows. They were that good. The writing was that good. A wonderful director and crew. B, I'd known B in New York, met her several times. What's his name? Her husband had directed same time next year when I took that over. That's another $6 Million Man story. Bernie Slade was my writer who wrote the pilot for Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. And then he wrote a weekend, as he said, over a long week, same time next year, and then wanted me to do the role. And the Broadway producer said, we need a Broadway name. And that's how I did not do same time. And in the next, every time somebody would leave, Charlie Grodin did it. And every time somebody would leave, Bernie called. He said, can you come in? I said, no, I was doing something else and doing something else and doing something else. And miraculously, in 77, I got a call in December, Don Murray's leaving. Will you want to do it? I said, you bet. Flew in, met Betsy, met everybody, Betsy Palmer, and opened New Year's night at a snowstorm in 78. Right. But the director, whose name I can't think of right now, he was married to B. Arthur, and he had come in to see it.
Right.
He said, yeah, we should have done it from the beginning. It was a great time. And it was closing in 6 months, and my contract was 6 months. And Jack Lemmon was coming in with Bernie's new play, and they had the theater book jackets. And when I came in, I got re-reviewed with Betsy, and the box office picked up 85%. And producer looked at me and said, damn, we'll have to. So I stayed in, and they moved the show to the Ambassador, and we did it there. And then I left after my 6-month contract. But another $6 Million Man show. And, but the show itself, I mean, it's a very, very popular show. And I saw it all, oh God, maybe 6-7 years ago, maybe 6, yeah. And I said, I get more comments on that show. It's like it's playing all the time. I said, on the airplane, I get all of the gay stewards, loved you in Golden Girls. I mean, thank you very much. And it's a good time. I mean, but Paul laughed, and he said that was one of our most popular shows. So when we strip it into syndication, we don't just do the 22 shows that were that year. We may drop it in many years and just drop it into another 22 cycles. So over the 10-year period, I keep being dropped into within a single year a couple times. And I'm getting very nice residuals on it. And I thank you, Paul. Thank you. But it explains a lot.
I was chatting with Barbara Crampton
Oh,
the other day, and we'll come to you working with Barbara in just a few moments. But before we do that, then I'd just like to. So in the early 2000s, you actually left acting or you put it on a back burner rather, to concentrate on doing the documentary series you referred to earlier on. So, which is quite a switch, I guess. How did that come about?
It was actually, I was doing Baywatch and very well. And I was also had done the first season of Baywatch. And then I had directed a feature defense play for a producer before. It was very successful as a foreign pre-sale. And then he gave me another script, Neon City. And I spent time rewriting all of that and produced and directed it. We shot it all at Salt Lake and Michael Ironside, Vanity, good cast. And it was a Western, but it was a Western the year 2050. It was like the gal that originally wrote it, she wrote it watching Stagecoach. So she said, suppose they have to get from Jericho to Neon City and cross the Badlands. And it's all after the nuclear and the Holocaust, everything, whatever goes on. And I had done that, and it went very well and did well. And but Baywatch was down for a year because they wouldn't buy it for another. They could buy it for another season, but the people who were financing it, Grant Tinker, who had Mary Tyler Moore's house, he had it as a show, but they deficit financed a number of things, Gannett newspapers, and they finally, no, we're not going to deficit this show. So we were down, and the producers of Baywatch, they got permission from Grant. They said, can we sell it for syndication and do it ourselves? And they did. We were the first new show in syndication, original. And during that down year, well, then we come back, and I did the first year of syndication directing. I directed a few of them and was having a good time, but I had done on camera air combat. US News Magazine was going to say, why can't we do what Time does with all of these videos? And so they created a video arm and air combat. And they went to Ferdy Grofé Jr. He had a bunch of videos of World War II and combat, etc. And they asked me to do on camera host, which I did. And it went well. They wanted another one, Combat at Sea, and I did narration, no on camera host. Then they wanted another air combat. And Ferdy had just not done good budgeting and bankrupted himself. So I talked to the young director who had been directing me in the first one. I said, we could do this. So he agreed. So we agreed to partner, and I put a mortgage on the house, and I guaranteed to US News that we could deliver the 13 hours of air combat too. No on camera, but we did a lot of recreations. And so we did, and they bought it. And I knew I was going into it, and I told the Baywatch, I couldn't, I had to walk away from that because I said I couldn't run the company we were doing a lot of filming and a lot of work, and it was a big investment. I wish now that I had not. It's one of these moves that it would have been very easy to just stay and do Baywatch. It was right down Malibu. I could, Will Rogers Beach, all of my work would have been there, and maybe work one day a week. And I could have certainly fit that in. But at the time, I was overwhelmed by the responsibility of what we were dealing with. And my wife as partner and my son, we all signed the bills on it. My partner, son Jason, did all of the post. In other words, he ran post-production. And Claire and I hit the road doing things with when we were shooting. So that's what started. And we did those 13, and then they wanted 13 more. We created ideas for them. This one was Masters of War. It was one-on-one. Kennedy and Khrushchev at the Bay of Pigs, that kind of thing. Mm. And that went well. And we did more recreation. And then we they were deciding to do biographies, meaning a new biography rather than the reruns of CBS. And we pitched and got 10, optioned for 5 and 5. And it was a whole different world. I mean, I don't think I would have stayed with them had these not come up, but they were just excellent opportunities. The first 5 we did, Michelangelo, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Michelangelo, Cleopatra, Attila the Hun. It was like they threw a dartboard at names and say, do these. So we knew we were doing 3 in Europe. Budgets were rat guano, and we made it work. So it took a photographer. We went to Rome. Cleopatra was in Rome, and Attila the Hun went to Rome, and Michelangelo. And our films were extremely high quality, and I brought everything I knew to bear on it. Great scripts, and they stand today. The films we did, particularly those biographies, Michelangelo, Washington, Franklin, then some other ones we made later in the second group. It was just a great time. So it became, you want to do something that you've never done before, great adventures. My God, we were standing outside of St. Peter's, and we didn't have permit. We had permit to do the Vatican, and we shot some Vatican, and now we're begging. And the woman that was let us in, and she said, no, the lights, you can't. I said, no, Kodak gave us this super fast film. We just need to get, okay, 45 minutes, you can have 40. Gave the camera, and my son was pulling focus. So they all ran through St. Peter's and shot, Pietà and everything, and covered the whole thing. And they got out the door, and they had about 10 minutes to spare. And I looked at them both, and I said, give me the cameras. I said, go. And they both went in, and just tourists enjoying. Meanwhile, I was still haranguing the woman. It was that kind of filming. We did every History Channel then gave us A Perfect Storm. Said, can you do something with this? And we did it with the original people, the pilots that flew, the guys that ditched. They were doing the film at the same time, and the director asked to see mine, and he looked at us to get the narrative. And when it was all said and done, he said, we should have done your script. We should have done your show. And it was a great time. Again, we did every military vessel in the world, in the American,
right.
Everything. And then every sailing ship. And in Sail 2000, we brought the great ships into New York Harbor. We were on a tug leading them in and then shooting, and I had cameras on everybody. It was very seductive. And by 2000, in 2008, we were doing Boneyard. And when we got to 2008 with the collapse, a big client that was financing collapsed and left us with a multi big bag. And so we spent the next maybe 2 years paying off bills and paying off people and taking care of it. And Claire and I were not on the road. That was the other thing. Claire and I hit the road. She produced, I directed, we produced and directed. She did the makeup. God, it was just great. And we'd take a cinematographer. Getting back to England, we had met Patrick Turley. And then when I came back to do the 4 hours of the Royal Navy, it became a great shoot with Turley and all of the English cast and crew. And it was just amazing. So to answer your question of why or what, the change, it kind of became itself. I was very unsatisfied in 92. Baywatch was fine, but it was very, very simple. And I was looking for new challenges. And this idea of doing it was just great. And getting back to Duncan, and Ballou was a guy at Georgia, and you just do everything and you just take it on.
Right.
But I met Chris Rowe through Gary Lockwood, and that's been a blessing. Chris is a third man, a terrific man that has come into my life, and it's been 10 years now. We've been having a great ride. As I'm sure Chris might have said to you, when I came back, nobody knew my name. No, I would go in for an audition, they send me in, and then I'd realize I'd been out 20 years on the road. And so this guy's 30. I said, he's 10 years old. He hadn't seen anything I've done. or something like that. And so I told Chris, I said, Chris, let's do anything and everything. If it's a audition for, Mickey Mouse, I will. And I'm the new guy in town, and it's a great feeling. I'm now back to winning with an audition, not being called and given a script. They want you to do it because of what you've done. I have to go in and earn it and win it. And this is what happened on one of the films you might ask me about is Edge of Isolation. But that's it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, before, because that's actually one of the more recent, because we were talking about horror films. I did want to touch upon We Are Still Here.
Ah.
With Barbara Crampton, as we.
Well, you asked me about Guns of the Mag 7. You got to ask me about We Are Still Here. It was an equal, wonderful, magical time that it happened. That Barbara, the cast made that work, and the cast was put together by Travis and Ted Gagan, and I was in there, and Chris had a shot at it with what's her name? It was a cast. They said, I don't know if Chris had mentioned it to you, but they asked him, do you have, and Chris says, can I help you with anything else? And he said, we're having trouble casting the old man that was the guy that ran the town. He said, I got a guy. And so they cast me, and I went in and worked on everything. The script was excellent, really excellent for the character and everybody else. And my first day on set was chewing ass on the Spectre, the guy who had been burned. What are you doing here? I was just going right after him, chewing him from one end to the other. That was my scene. And I came in and they, all right, let's go, roll it and rehearse. And I started rehearsing and finished the scene. And Ted looked at Travis and he says, we got to do some rewriting. They responded to what I wanted to do and did with the character. And God bless, they fed everything. Barbara, Sensiting, Ted Sensiting, Essendon, they were all very strong individual performers, actors, and it would not have worked. I don't think so for one instant if Barbara had not so fulfilled that kind of power. And it was, we see it all the time. It's a cliche of man and woman have lost a child. And it's such a cliche today, and doesn't mean it's any less. I mean, some of the major films today are those films, loss of a child. And it's just rich, and it resounds in the midst of all this, not giggly horror, but horror. The finale, with the gal who played the bartender, damn good actress. I mean, here I am coming, everybody. She's doing outrageous things with how many scissors get stuck in her, or knives get stuck in her neck. And me, I'm sitting there with my head gets up. What happens to you? Oh, son, I got to tell you, I squeeze my head and it blows. Oh, okay, fine. Excellent effects people. They were just carefully insane in the room and working the hands. I took 100 stills of that room with different devices. Again, it goes back to, I don't know what the budget was. I will say this, in all of the films and everything I've ever done, Travis is a complete class act in the sense that everything was there. And he sat on the camera with Ted. Ted was Ted's first film. And Ted had seen enough and written enough and done enough PR on everybody. He knew what he wanted and how it was to go. And all of this came together in 10 degrees below zero. Every day you're freezing everything. It was Palmyra in New York, and we were isolated in this house, and it just played and it worked. Rich. It's I have the same feeling of being with Madrid with this family. So it comes together in that kind of a way, and you're a part of it from beginning to end. That was the biggie. You're there from first shot to last.
Yeah.
Ask me anything you want. I'll be glad to tell you.
Well, one of the things I just must say, I'm fascinated to know that end scene was the one that you would begin with because what I love about it is the transition from the character in the film when you first see him all the way through, which just sets up that end moment so perfectly. Because it's what's going on is just like, this is not the normal reaction you expect from somebody when they're dealing with burning ghosts. But within the concept of the film and your performance and the way they wrote it for you, it just works beautifully.
I had to make sense of, look, I still don't know what's under the house. I said, I remember Ted, he said, well, it's this, Ted, I've got to know. And the line that we finally got was, every 30 years, the goddamn thing comes out and it wants blood and we have to give it to them. And so well, why don't you move? Why don't you just move to another town? So, no, it was, this is my town. And all of it, and they responded big time. Yeah.
And that you then worked with Barbara again on Reborn.
Let me go back to one thing I would like to say, and I say Larry Fessenden. Larry was one of these deceptively beautiful actors. I've worked in theater with them, and they are the people that's the first ones you hire to be part of your resident company because they can kind of do and fit so many things and do them. But the finale of it, how do you buy? How does the audience, how do you tell this story such that you believe the mother has been so devastated and so devastated and so devastated that she would rather have her son this way than no way at all. And that's why she goes down. And then the camera's on Larry. And he trying to believe and wants to believe and has been a good man. And when he gets to the head of the stairs and turns and looks down, and that quality in his voice, and what he did when he said, I forget what the child's name was, Johnny or something. And what he said would be like saying, child's name is Bobby. It might have been Bobby.
I've got Billy. I've got
Billy, maybe Billy.
Billy or William.
He turned the sound in his voice and went, Billy. It was wonderful, and I kept thinking, it's like the line is read absolute perfect, and then you can bring the curtain down.
Yeah.
The reading of the work. You can tell that I was going to say about Travis. I got a participation check. I have never received a participation check from anything I've ever done. It's always, they're Mickey Mouse contracts. It's called, there's golden points and there's silver points and there's paper points and there's points that exist somewhere in Cleveland. And points, they got a whole drawer for them there. But as the actor contracts in particular format now, he said, and I'm sending this off before I've done bookkeeping and accounting. It's one of the things you can get to distribute to the actors after bookkeeping and accounting. And as a producer, he said, no, I'll give it to you before I've settled all my bills. And it was just wonderful. It was a significant amount, and it was not like, a $2 residual. Just wanted to say that about him. There are producers, and he represents the best kind of.
Yes, because I know Travis then went on to work with Barbara on Barbara's latest film, Jacob's Wife.
Yeah,
directing.
Barbara was a joy in that sense. I mean, it's she's a heavyweight, and in the sense that life has put her in a genre. Life has put her. It'd be like somebody said, "I'm a heavyweight soap opera actor." Well, there's an art to acting soap opera, and there are people that come into it and go out of it. I did it for a year with a nighttime soap and thought it was going to be different, and it drove me out of my mind. But I couldn't. But it's a world of its own. But what she does and has done with her work, she's first class.
Yeah,
first class.
Yeah. No, and as I say, you went on to work with her on Reborn.
Yes, that was I don't know what she told you about that.
Well, basically that she had a weekend to prepare for it.
But she was came in.
She was replacing someone.
I went into the scene, but it was even knowing when I did the scene with the actress who was there. It's like I've had a couple of those occasions in which the person it was actually mostly during the 70s. with a lot of cocaine and drugs, and it was heavy weight on the set. There were actors that I'd worked with in theater that, they'd have just too damn much to drink between matinee and evening, or they'd have too much to drink before rehearsal. And they're either gone or you put them out or do something. But drugs was that would, you come in after lunch and the director would be flying. When you come back after lunch, all right, we're going to fly here. Now we've had a few things. And everything okay? Everybody okay? Good. Yeah. Oh, God, it's going to be one of those afternoons. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was like in England, but it was crazy.
No, when I was making Hellraiser, I was working in an art center as well. My pay the rent job was doing marketing and so on in an art center in a small town. And we used to have a lot of touring companies come through. People who'd been on television, who'd done really well in soap operas and so on, and were now doing theater on the name, on the back of this stuff. Too many of them, you just look at them and you can see it in the skin. And the fact that they are up in the bar almost after curtain down. Within 5-10 minutes of curtain down, they are going to be up in the bar in the theater. But you just think it's such a waste. You lose so much.
Yeah.
If you are suffering from that particular illness. They're not judging people on that. But we've talked for an awfully long time. There is one thing you mentioned earlier on, edge of isolation.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Did you see it?
I have seen Edge of Isolation.
Chris had set up an audition, and the audition's material was the climactic scene. He's in the cave and chopping, and he raves at them, and ends up tying up the young man and the girl, and Jeff Holcall is sitting there with the gal has a camera, and he was looking away, and I did the scene, and it was a moment of silence, and I hear him say, "Awesome, damn." So then I left, and then Chris said, "They want you to do it." I said, "Fine." And then something else happened, and then anyway, Jeff wrote it, produced it, raised the money for it. It was a damn good script in the sense of the ideas. The budget really showed heavily with the outcast, but the idea was excellent, and I really responded to it. And the point of view, it's particularly going back where I am in Palmyra, New York, and the Mormons, and their story of having to go, and you get out because people just don't go along with it. Oh, by the way, we happen to, we eat, we ingest, you come back, and it's the cycle of life. Well, and I can believe that. That makes sense to me. Okay. And the only thing that I felt, it's too bad he didn't have enough money for it to really hire a cinematographer. We had an artistic young man and a poet, studied poetry and but he started doing portrait photography and he shot the whole thing with a regular, what do you call it, single lens camera.
Right, SLR, yeah.
So there was it suffered quite a bit. I mean, Jeff knew where he was going with the camera. The cameraman knew where he wanted to be, and then you're kind of what they were looking for. Horror requires a bit more. I mean, the depth and the look and the feeling of everything must need to be richer.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, competitive today. I'm amazed. I've been a member of the Motion Picture Academy 40 years with that documentary committee, but I'm getting all of the technology, the new material, but I'm just stunned and amazed at the student films. Well, the student can be 20 to 75, and you're looking at them, all of them, you say, damn, it looks like a David Lean opening in a feature, and you're watching and watch, and then somebody opens their mouth and they can't act, and the script is terrible and that kind of thing. It's all of the technology, and these people are getting films to direct, and they still having the same problem. So I went up for a couple with Chris that we've gone in, and I mean, there's no way I'm going to do this. These people have no idea what they're doing, and you're going to fall apart on the stage. But it's, I have to congratulate Jeff. I mean, it was a good cast, good people, and it was just so limiting in the quality of
Yes.
looking at, and you miss it because the competition today is, I mean, my goodness, it's so strong.
Yeah, it's a real shame. As I say, it was, funnily enough, I was put off by the trailer because they really should have colorized the trailer better. When you actually get to see the film, the colorization in the film is actually better than in the trailer. But you're absolutely right. I'm sorry,
I know what
whoever cinematographer is, but it
I
just didn't work.
In a weird way, I could mention I think it's available somewhere on YouTube. I did a comedy, Same Shame on the Bixby Boys, and it was written by Bill Bowers. Bill Bowers wrote Support Your Local Sheriff, and a brilliant, wonderful man, but he Oscar nomination for The Gunfighter with Gregory Peck. But he wrote this, and so his son was going to direct, and Terry Frazee was putting up the money for it. We shot it. Good cast, but we really didn't have any money or time to shoot. We shot at the old Paramount Ranch before it burned down. But Michael Milham was the Englishman cinematographer. And Michael was wonderful, and he'd studied with everybody and worked hard, but had filmed on his own all over the world. But we didn't have sets. And the saloon or the restaurant where the diner where we're all eating, they put up, the walls were cardboard, and then they were painted cheaply, and they didn't have money for scene paint, didn't have money for anything. So what he did was he put a source light somewhere, but light would fall off before it hit the walls. So the saloon was dark. The lighting was around the bar, of course, we had lighting, but you were kind of isolating. And the same in the diner. You were right on the people and tight, so you never really moved out. But I remember people saying, it's kind of if it had been lighter, it was awful dark in these walls. It wasn't, it was a beautiful scene. I mean, the bar was wonderful looking. Quality was excellent in the film. But you had kind of it should have been more, it should have been lighter, shouldn't it? Or something, that was it. Michael couldn't shoot the damn sets, he had to do it. So this was the similar kind of thing with, football was reverse. He had all the sets, he just didn't have the camera.
It's always, this is the thing about film. It's a technical thing, and
We Are Still Here. That guy was a genius. He's a director, but the cinematographer. I don't have his name right now, but he made that work. Did everything that Ted could see and think and wanted, and more.
Yeah.
And just kept it moving.
Yes.
He was the one that was a real spark on the set, and it was a great team that Travis put together to make this. Really, everybody was high quality, meaning wonderful.
So we've gone way over our time, so I just want to finish with a couple.
Wonderful.
It's fine. Any chance of a memoir? You mentioned about your papers being. Are you working on a memoir at all?
I can't tell you how seductive that is. And you can always quote me. I said, when I think of the time I have left, I really don't want to spend it sitting on my ass writing about myself and what I did in my life. But I would. I probably will. I was watching a special on PBS on Doc Severinsen. He was the Madman trumpet player, and John Carson show. Well, whatever happened to Doc Severinsen after he left, after the Carson show closed? Well, he's 92 years old, and he's playing the trumpet, and he's on a full schedule but he's not just playing the trumpet, he's playing the trumpet. I mean, it's this mad jazz and making these appearances. He said, I work out 3 times. He's a miracle to look at him. And I said, well, look at me. When I came back in, all these guys that were my peers, and they called in, they want a 70-year-old man to come in. So Chris sends me, I go in, and I walk into the room, and there's all these old men. And all I could think of is Clint Eastwood saying, you let the old man in. He said, don't let the old man in. I mean, these guys probably were old when the time they were 65, and they're okay, but it's everything is that way. Well, I don't feel that way. I don't. Everything seems to be holding together very well, and I don't see myself any different. Um, Things are there, of course.
Sure. Sure.
I'm doing Airport 77 with Jimmy Stewart. We're standing at the top of the gangway of his 747 and waiting for the scene shot. I'm playing the hijacker. And, oh, Monty, so on. I said, well, and what's it like? You know, is it any more difficulty playing at your age as you get older? And he said, well, you know, they're a lot more careful on stairs. You know, you really try not to take them. You like to work flat land. I'm concerned as to whether or not they're going to put a cherry picker up here to get me off so I don't have to walk down these goddamn stairs. So, and then I'm looking at Christopher Plummer. It's a miracle. Christopher. I was 86 or something, but watch him do John Barrymore on stage. Yes, I would love to do stage. I'd love to get a play and do something. And it's just difficult. And anyway, that's where I am.
Sure, but you mentioned earlier on you have something else you've just finished doing. I think you should leave.
I think you should. Yeah, I think you should leave. It's on Netflix. You can't miss it. It's put together by a producing group they were producers on 5 or 6, 7 years on in that 45-year period of Saturday Night Live.
Right.
That's what they do. And then they have this mad character, the one guy that he put it together, Tim Williams. And he's an obnoxious character. He plays really outrageous characters, and that's a part of it. But they've got some top people coming in doing parts of the sketch. It became a thing to do. And I called my granddaughter. She's in Chicago in law school. I said, I'm doing. She says, really? What? My God, that's my favorite show. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but I said, look, you look at them. Some of them doesn't take it much. You can say, oh, I see. There are a bunch of sketches put together. Some are 5 minutes, some are 20 minutes. This was about a 25-minute, 30-minute, but it was funny. I felt funny. Great idea. I laughed my butt while I'm doing it. I've just, and well done. High quality production, very high quality. Looks like a feature.
Monty, thank you very much indeed. And hopefully see you soon.
Meanwhile, take good care of yourself.
My thanks again to Monte Markham. Wow, I could listen to that man's voice all day. And we still didn't have time to talk about the luggage in the crypt questions. We'll have him on again. Next week, I'm joined by PJ Souls. And in the meantime, stay safe and well.